Welcome to Sleepy Story World. Tonight, we are going to settle in quietly together and spend some time inside the world of gorillas. If there is a topic you would like us to explore next, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you find value in what we create here and want to help keep these videos going, there is a Sleepy Science Patreon where every contribution, however small, is genuinely appreciated. Now, let us begin. Somewhere deep in the heart of Central Africa, there is a forest. The trees there grow so tall and press so closely together that the light filtering down through the canopy does not arrive in wide open sheets the way it does across an open meadow. Instead, it falls in narrow columns and soft scattered fragments that drift and shift with the slow movement of the leaves overhead. The forest floor below is dim and green and profoundly quiet. And somewhere within that quiet, moving slowly, breathing slowly, living in their own unhurried and deliberate way, are gorillas. It is worth pausing on that word for a moment. Gorilla. There is a weight to it, a density, a sense of presence. And yet nearly everything we've come to understand about gorillas tells us that their lives are defined not by heaviness, but by something closer to a deep and settled calm. They are large, genuinely remarkably large, but they are also patient, social, tender with their young, and possessed of an inner life that science is only beginning to fully appreciate. Gorillas are great apes, placing them within the same broad family as chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, and human beings. All of these creatures are more closely related to one another than any of them are to monkeys. This distinction often surprises people who assume that all primates with fur and four limbs must belong to the same broad group. But great apes occupy a distinct and particular branch of the primate family tree, one defined by high intelligence, complex social behavior, and the complete absence of a tail. Gorillas have never had a tail, not once in their entire evolutionary history. In that small detail, the taillessness, the upright posture, the broad chest, the forward-facing eyes, you can sense just how near to us they truly are. Gorillas share approximately 98.3% of their DNA with humans. That figure is worth a moment of genuine stillness. 98.3%. The genetic distance between a human being and a silverback gorilla resting quietly against a tree in the Congo is narrower than the distance between a house mouse and a rat. When we look at gorillas, we are not looking at something foreign or unknowable. We are looking at something deeply, quietly familiar. A reflection with slightly different features. A version of life that took a different path through the ancient forest, but began from nearly the same starting point. There are two recognized species of gorilla alive today: the Western gorilla and the Eastern gorilla. Each of these is further divided into two subspecies. The Western lowland gorilla is the most numerous and the one most often encountered in zoological parks. The Cross River gorilla is critically endangered, living only within a small mountainous region along the border of Nigeria and Cameroon. The Eastern lowland gorilla, also known as Grauer's gorilla, is found in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And then there is the mountain gorilla, perhaps the most widely recognized of all, living in the high volcanic forests of Rwanda, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. 4 subspecies, 4 distinct populations, 4 separate and ongoing stories of survival. The mountain gorilla is the one that most people picture when they close their eyes and imagine a gorilla. Large and dark, with a remarkable coat of long, dense fur that collects around the shoulders like a heavy cloak. Mountain gorillas live at elevations of up to 4,000 meters above sea level, in forests where temperatures can drop sharply at night and mornings arrive cold, pale, and wrapped in mist. Their fur is longer and thicker than that of lowland gorillas, an adaptation shaped over millennia by the demands of life at altitude. When you encounter photographs of mountain gorillas in the early morning light, their breath visible in the cold air, their fur beaded with moisture from the mist, they carry a quality that is difficult to describe precisely. Ancient, enormous, and completely at ease. The mountain gorilla story is also one of the most remarkable conservation achievements of the last half-century. In the 1980s, the global population of mountain gorillas was estimated at fewer than 300 individuals. 300. A number so small, it barely feels real when you sit with it. Through the sustained effort of researchers, local communities, governments, and conservationists, people who devoted years and sometimes entire careers to this single purpose, that number has been slowly and carefully turned around. Today, more than 1,000 mountain gorillas are alive. The mountain gorilla is one of the only great apes whose population is actively increasing. In a world where so many species are quietly disappearing, that is not a small thing. A fully grown male gorilla, called a silverback for the distinctive saddle of silver-gray fur that develops across his back as he matures, can weigh anywhere between 140 and 220 kilograms. That is somewhere between 310 and 485 pounds, depending on the individual. They are creatures of extraordinary physical presence, and yet almost everything they eat is plant matter: leaves, stems, bark, fruit when the season allows, occasionally roots and other vegetation, sometimes a small insect, a caterpillar, a handful of ants, but these are minor additions to what is essentially a fully herbivorous diet. All of that size, all of that physical substance, built entirely from plants. There is something quietly humbling in that. The digestive efficiency required to convert such enormous volumes of fibrous plant material into that kind of body mass is one of the great, understated achievements of primate evolution. A gorilla may consume up to 30 kilograms of vegetation in a single day, approximately 66 pounds of leaves, stems, and bark. That is roughly the weight of an average 10-year-old child. Eaten every day, slowly and methodically, with great patience and no apparent urgency. A gorilla's day is organized almost entirely around eating. They wake each morning in the nests they constructed the evening before and begin moving through the forest in search of food. The first few hours belong entirely to foraging. Then, as the day warms, they rest, sometimes for several hours, grooming one another, sitting quietly in filtered shade, or simply doing nothing at all with evident contentment. In the afternoon, the foraging resumes. They move slowly, covering perhaps a mile or two over the course of an entire day. As the light begins to fade and the forest darkens around them, they build fresh nests and settle in for the night. The nests are worth pausing on. Every evening, without exception, gorillas construct a new sleeping place from the materials around them. They bend and fold branches, weave in leaves and stems, and form a kind of platform or curved bowl that cradles the body through the night. Adult gorillas almost always build their nests at ground level or close to it. Younger gorillas and juveniles often prefer to build slightly elevated, a few meters above the forest floor. A mother with a nursing infant builds her nest large enough for both of them. The infant curled against her chest or tucked into the warm fold of her arm. There is something immediately recognizable about that image. A mother, a child, a nest built with care before nightfall. The small one warm and held, while the forest around them goes dark and still. Gorillas never return to a used nest. Each morning they leave the previous night's sleeping place behind and build anew when evening comes. Researchers have used this habit to track gorilla populations, counting old nests scattered through the undergrowth to estimate how many individuals passed through a given area. The nests themselves decompose quickly in the wet forest air, returning to soil within a matter of weeks. A gorilla nest is, in this sense, like nearly everything else in a gorilla's life: temporary, impermanent, built for a single night and then released. There is a philosophy available in that, if you are inclined to look for one. Nothing accumulated unnecessarily, nothing carried forward beyond its usefulness. Each night, a new place of rest. Each morning, a clean beginning. The silverback is, in many ways, the center around which a gorilla group is organized. A gorilla family, sometimes referred to as a troop, typically consists of one dominant silverback male, several adult females, their offspring at various stages of development, and occasionally one or two younger adult males, known as blackbacks, who have not yet reached full maturity. The silverback leads. He determines when the group moves and where it goes, when it rests, and how it responds to perceived threats. He is the still point at the center of the group's daily life, and yet his authority is not the dramatic, aggressive kind that one might expect from an animal of his size. Most of the time, a silverback leads simply by moving. He rises and begins walking, and the others follow. There is a quietness to it, a form of authority that carries no need to announce itself. He communicates with the group through a soft, low, rhythmic vocalization that researchers call a belch vocalization, a name that does little justice to what it actually conveys. It is a gentle, rumbling sound, unhurried and steady, used during travel and rest, whenever the group is together and all is well. It is the sound of a leader saying, without drama or urgency, "I am here. Follow me. Everything is fine." The silverback also plays an unexpectedly tender role with the younger members of the group. He is often remarkably patient with juveniles who climb over him, play around him, or simply lean against him in the warmth of the afternoon. There exist photographs, some of them genuinely difficult to look at without feeling something, of enormous silverbacks lying on their backs in the forest with small, bright-eyed juveniles tumbling across their chests. The silverback perfectly still, the infant in motion. A gentleness so apparent it requires no interpretation. Younger males, who have not yet achieved silverback status, occupy an interesting position in the group. They are old enough to be aware of their own growing strength, but not yet experienced or seasoned enough to lead. They test limits. They play roughly. They are, in many respects, adolescents, and the silverback treats them accordingly, with patience, occasional firm correction, and a kind of measured tolerance that implies a longer view of things. Eventually, a young male will leave his birth group. This departure is expected and natural. He may spend time alone or in the company of other solitary males, sometimes forming loose associations that researchers call bachelor groups, informal collections of males traveling together temporarily, without females or young offspring. From there, a young male must find a way to attract females and gradually build a group of his own. It is a slow and uncertain process. A female may choose to leave her birth group and join him, or she may not. The decision depends on many factors: his temperament, his steadiness, his apparent capacity to keep her and future offspring safe. Gorilla life, it becomes clear, requires patience at every stage. Gorillas experience a wide and recognizable range of emotions: joy, grief, affection, boredom, frustration, curiosity. Something that looks, in both posture and behavior, very much like contentment, as when a gorilla settles into a warm patch of afternoon light and simply sits, doing nothing at all, with obvious satisfaction. These observations are not projections. They are the conclusions of decades of careful field research by scientists who spent years watching gorillas and recording precisely what they saw. Gorillas grieve. When a member of the group dies, the others often remain nearby. They touch the body gently. They sit beside it. They sometimes produce low, unusual vocalizations that researchers have described as mourning calls. A mother who loses an infant will frequently carry the body for days, sometimes weeks. She continues to groom it. She holds it close through the night. She does not, or perhaps cannot, let go. This is not easily explained as simple instinct or reflex. The grief of a gorilla mother is a grief that recognizes what has been lost, that knows something irreplaceable is now missing, and that holds on because holding on is all that remains. In that recognition, in that tender and sorrowful refusal to release, gorillas are not so different from us at all. Gorillas also express joy, particularly the young. Play is a central feature of juvenile gorilla life. Watching young gorillas at play produces in the observer something close to uncomplicated happiness. They chase one another, they tumble and wrestle. They hang from branches, let go, drop into the vegetation below, and immediately climb back up to do it again. They pull at vines. They spin in place until they fall over dizzy. And while doing all of this, they produce a soft, breathy, rhythmic sound, a panting exhalation that researchers have identified as gorilla laughter. Gorilla laughter does not sound exactly like human laughter. It is quieter, more breathy, with softer edges, but it has the same fundamental rhythm, the same involuntary quality, the same connection to play and touch and physical delight. Researchers believe that laughter in great apes and laughter in humans share a common evolutionary ancestor, that somewhere in the deep past, something that felt good made a sound, and that sound gradually became laughter. When you hear a young gorilla laughing while at play, you are hearing something very, very old. Gorillas are remarkably communicative animals. The range of ways they convey information to one another is varied, purposeful, and worth understanding in some detail. They produce a wide array of vocalizations: the soft, belch vocalization used for reassurance and group cohesion. A sharp scream signaling alarm or fear. Grunts, barks, and hoots for various social contexts. And then the chest beat, perhaps the most recognized gorilla behavior of all. The silverback rising onto his hind legs, striking a rapid, drumming rhythm against his chest with open hands, producing a hollow, resonant boom that carries through the forest for remarkable distances. The chest beat is often interpreted as a display of aggression, and it can serve that function. But researchers have documented it in many other contexts as well. During play, during moments of excitement, during what appears to be spontaneous self-expression with no specific target. It may function as a kind of announcement. I am here. I am this present. I am not concealing myself. Importantly, the sound is not produced by closed fists, as is commonly assumed. Gorillas strike their chests with cupped, open hands, creating a hollow chamber that amplifies the impact, in the same way a drum amplifies a strike. Each silverback's chest beat is subtly individual, distinct enough that experienced field researchers can sometimes identify a specific gorilla by sound alone before the animal is even visible, a signature rendered in percussion. Gorillas also communicate extensively through posture and body language. A gorilla standing sideways to another, moving with stiff, deliberate steps, fur raised, that is a display of challenge or dominance. A gorilla turning away, presenting its back, moving slowly and without urgency, that is submission or appeasement. Direct, sustained eye contact is generally understood as a threat in gorilla social language, which is why visitors participating in regulated gorilla tourism programs in Rwanda and Uganda are instructed not to stare directly into a gorilla's eyes. Not because it will necessarily provoke a reaction, but because sustained staring is considered confrontational in gorilla terms, and it is only courteous to know something of the language of the place you are visiting. Grooming is another essential and nuanced form of communication. The slow, attentive work of moving through another gorilla's fur, removing debris, parasites, and flakes of skin serves social bonding as much as hygiene. When a gorilla grooms another, the gesture carries meaning. I trust you. I am present with you. I am not a threat. Preferred grooming partners tend to be the most closely bonded individuals in the group. Females groom the silverback. Females groom one another. Young gorillas groom their mothers. And occasionally, the silverback himself, that vast and unhurried presence, will groom someone smaller with extraordinary delicacy. A hand the size of a dinner plate, moving carefully through an infant's fur, slowly, gently, as though nothing in the world matters more than this one small act of quiet attention. One gorilla deserves particular mention. Her name was Coco, a western lowland gorilla born in 1971 at the San Francisco Zoo. She was introduced to American Sign Language at approximately 1 year of age by researcher Penny Patterson. Over the course of her life, Coco learned to use more than 1,000 signs. She combined them in ways that went beyond simple repetition, creating new phrases for concepts that had no existing sign, demonstrating something that looked, by reasonable observation, like genuine linguistic creativity. When she first encountered a ring, she signed the phrase, finger bracelet. When she saw a mask for the first time, she signed, eye hat. That is a small and genuine poem, a mind reaching for the right words with whatever tools it has available. Coco also had a beloved cat, a small gray kitten she called All Ball. She was gentle with the cat. She held it carefully and groomed it and played with it. When All Ball was struck and killed by a car, Coco was informed. She was quiet for a time. Then she signed, bad, sad, bad, frown, cry, frown, sad. Scientific debate exists around the precise nature of Coco's relationship to language. Those debates are legitimate. But whatever conclusions are reached on the technical question, Coco's sadness at the loss of her cat is not a matter of interpretation. It was real. It was expressed clearly. Bad, sad, frown, cry. Some truths are simpler and also larger than the debates that surround them. The forests where gorillas live are among the most biologically diverse places on Earth. The Congo Basin rainforest, which provides habitat for a large portion of the world's gorilla population, is the second largest tropical rainforest on the planet after the Amazon. It covers approximately 2 million square kilometers. It contains 10,000 plant species, 1,000 bird species, and 400 species of mammals. It is a place of density and complexity so profound that even scientists who have studied it for decades continue to discover things they did not previously know. Gorillas are woven into that complexity in a specific and important way. They eat fruit and move through the forest dispersing seeds, large seeds from large fruits that smaller animals cannot carry. A gorilla's digestive system processes these seeds and deposits them, sometimes kilometers from the parent tree, enclosed in the small quantity of natural fertilizer and ready to germinate. Gorillas are, in this sense, unconscious gardeners. They tend the forest simply by living in it, by eating and moving and resting, without any awareness of the ecological work they are performing. Without gorillas, or more precisely without large seed dispersers in general, the composition of the forest would gradually shift. Certain tree species would struggle to propagate. Others would spread in ways that would reduce the overall diversity of the ecosystem. The gorilla's presence is one of the quiet forces that keeps the forest as complex and varied as it is. And the forest, in turn, is what keeps the gorilla alive, each sustaining the other across a relationship that stretches back millions of years. The great apes as a group began to diverge from the old world monkeys approximately 25 million years ago. The lineage that would eventually become gorillas separated from the lineage that would become humans and chimpanzees roughly 8 to 10 million years ago. 8 to 10 million years of parallel evolution. 8 to 10 million years of separate paths through separate forests. And yet, 98.3% of the same DNA. The split happened, but something vast remained shared. In the millions of years that followed, gorillas evolved with deep specificity for life in African forest environments. Their arms are longer than their legs, a feature shared with other great apes, reflecting a history of movement through trees. Although adult gorillas spend most of their time on the ground, younger individuals climb regularly, and even large adults will ascend to reach fruit or to construct elevated sleeping nests. They move on all fours in a way that is unique to gorillas and chimpanzees, a form of locomotion called knuckle walking, in which the fingers are curled and the animal walks on the knuckles rather than the flat of the palm. This protects the sensitive skin of the hand and allows efficient movement at a solid pace when motivation requires it. A gorilla moving at speed can outrun a human with ease. Most of the time, however, there is simply no reason to hurry. The forest provides what is needed. There is time. There is always enough time. A gorilla's hands are worth particular attention. They are large, dark, heavily padded, equipped with flat nails rather than claws, and fitted with fully opposable thumbs. Gorilla fingerprints are unique to each individual. No two gorillas share the same pattern of ridges. Researchers have used fingerprints alongside nose prints, which are also individually unique, to identify specific gorillas in field settings. Field researchers maintain photographic records of gorilla nose prints, built up over years of observation, allowing them to track the same individual across the full arc of its life. In the wild, gorillas typically live to around 35 to 40 years of age. In captivity, with consistent veterinary care and reliable nutrition, they can live considerably longer. The oldest gorilla on record was a female named Fatu, held at Berlin Zoo and believed to have lived past 65 years. 65 years. Long enough to see the group she was born into age around her. Long enough for grandchildren, perhaps great-grandchildren in gorilla terms. Long enough to accumulate the kind of accumulated knowledge about individuals, about routines, about what can be trusted and what cannot, that in a human being we would call wisdom. Gorillas are considered elderly from around 30 years onward, and there is evidence that older individuals in wild groups receive a kind of quiet deference from younger members. Space is given at feeding areas. Grooming is offered attentively. Younger gorillas will sometimes wait for an older individual to finish eating before approaching. Whether this represents something meaningfully similar to respect or simply reflects a learned pattern based on long-established hierarchy cannot be stated with certainty. But it is worth noticing. Age is not invisible in gorilla society. The old are attended to. The old are seen. Gorillas also appear to have some awareness of death as a distinct state, different from sleep, from rest, from simple absence. Beyond remaining near the bodies of those who have died, gorillas have been observed becoming very still in the presence of death, investigating it carefully, touching it with apparent caution, then withdrawing. The quality of that behavior, what observers describe as falling somewhere between careful investigation and something approaching reverence, is difficult to characterize precisely. Young gorillas, who have not previously encountered death, will sometimes approach a dead animal in the forest and attempt to rouse it. They will touch it, vocalize, and wait for a response that does not come. Then they sit quietly nearby for a time, before eventually moving on. What is happening in a gorilla's mind during that interval of waiting, what it understands, what it feels, cannot be known with certainty. But the behavior suggests that something meaningful is occurring. On the question of intelligence, gorillas are clearly capable of sophisticated thought, if we allow intelligence to include problem-solving, learning from experience, navigating social complexity, and using external objects as tools. Tool use in wild gorillas was first formally documented in 2005, when a researcher observed a gorilla using a stick to test the depth of a pool of water before wading into it. Another individual was observed using a detached piece of trunk as a stabilizing support while reaching for aquatic vegetation in a swamp. Simple tools, yes, but tools nonetheless. Objects selected and used deliberately to extend the body's capabilities. There is also well-documented evidence of cultural transmission in gorilla populations. Different groups in different regions have been observed performing certain behaviors in slightly different ways. Not because of any genetic difference, but because one individual learned a technique and passed it on, and their descendants passed it on again. Wordless culture, slow culture, but culture. Any thorough and honest account of gorillas would be incomplete without Dian Fossey. Fossey was an American researcher who traveled to Rwanda in the 1960s to study mountain gorillas. She did not have formal training in primatology at the time of her first trip. Her background was in occupational therapy. What she had beyond that was a pull toward these particular animals in these particular mountains that she found difficult to explain and impossible to ignore. She established a research camp in the Virunga Mountains at approximately 3,300 meters above sea level and began doing something that had not quite been done before. She went into the forest each day and simply sat near the gorillas. She did not approach them. She did not attempt to interact with them. She was simply present. The gorillas were wary at first, then curious, then, over many months, gradually accustomed to her. She learned to mimic their vocalizations, their postures, and their movements. She would scratch herself as gorillas scratch, produce the soft belch vocalizations, and avert her gaze to signal that she posed no challenge. She knuckle-walked. She ate vegetation. She made herself, as much as a human being can, legible to gorillas on gorilla terms. Over years, something remarkable occurred. The gorillas allowed her closer. Not completely, not without continued wariness, but close enough that she could remain among them for hours without altering their behavior. Close enough that young gorillas would approach her of their own accord. And on a now widely known afternoon in 1972, a young gorilla she had named Peanut reached out and held her hand. Fossey later described it as one of the most significant moments of her life. A wild animal choosing contact across the vast distance between two species. A single, deliberate gesture. She spent nearly 2 decades in those mountains. She named the gorillas she observed and tracked their social structures over time. She documented behaviors that had never previously been recorded. She fought fiercely, and sometimes controversially, against the poaching that threatened the population she had come to know as individuals. She was found dead in her research camp in December of 1985. The circumstances of her death were never fully resolved. She was buried at the research station she had built in the small cemetery she had established for the gorillas lost to poachers over the years. She remains there still, in the mountain mist, among the animals she gave her life to understand and protect. Her book, Gorillas in the Mist, endures as one of the significant works of field biology. More than that, it is a record of devotion to a particular community of beings in a particular place at a particular moment in history. She knew each gorilla individually. She grieved for them individually. She celebrated their births and carried the weight of their deaths. Digit, taken by poachers in 1977. Uncle Bert. Macho. Quince. Names given with care and held with grief. Conservation, at its most honest, is grief work. It is the work of loving something that is endangered, of paying sustained attention to something small and irreplaceable, and doing whatever is possible to ensure that it persists. Fossey understood that completely. The mountain gorillas alive today, those 1,000 individuals and more moving slowly through the morning mist of the Virungas, are, in some quiet and incalculable way, part of her legacy. All 4 gorilla subspecies are currently listed as either endangered or critically endangered on the IUCN Red List. The western lowland gorilla, the most numerous, has an estimated population of between 100,000 and 200,000 individuals, a figure that has declined sharply over recent decades. The Cross River gorilla numbers fewer than 300 individuals remaining. The threats are several. Habitat loss is the most pervasive. The forests gorillas depend on are being steadily reduced by agriculture, logging, mining, and expanding human settlement. Forests that required centuries to develop can be cleared in days. When the forest disappears, gorillas disappear with it. They cannot persist in open farmland or degraded scrubland. They require old, intact, complex forest, with the full range of plant species that millennia of evolution have taught them to rely on. Poaching remains a serious threat in some regions. Infants are sometimes taken for the illegal wildlife trade, a process that almost always requires killing the mother and frequently other adults who attempt to defend her. The trauma to the social group extends far beyond any single loss. A group that loses its silverback or multiple adults can remain destabilized for years afterward. Disease is also a significant risk. Because gorillas share so much of their biology with humans, they are susceptible to many of the same illnesses. Respiratory infections can move rapidly through gorilla populations. The Ebola virus has caused substantial losses among Western gorilla populations over the past several decades. Even a common cold, a minor inconvenience to most adult humans, can be potentially fatal to a gorilla with no prior exposure or developed immunity. This is why gorilla tourism programs require visitors to wear masks and prohibit anyone feeling unwell from approaching the gorillas. The protection flows in both directions, and yet there is genuine reason for measured hope. The mountain gorilla population is growing. Tourism programs in Rwanda and Uganda, carefully managed with small visitor groups permitted to spend 1 hour near a habituated gorilla family per day, generate meaningful revenue that supports conservation efforts and the communities living near gorilla habitat. When local people have a concrete economic stake in the gorilla's survival, the gorillas are more likely to survive. Anti-poaching rangers, the majority of them local individuals who have spent their lives near these forests and know them with intimacy, patrol gorilla habitat in difficult and sometimes dangerous conditions throughout the year. They remove snares, monitor individual gorillas, report on births, and respond to threats quietly and consistently. Their work is among the least visible and most essential components of the gorilla conservation effort. What the mountain gorilla demonstrates is this: when human beings choose sustained attention, when they choose care and action, and maintain that commitment across decades, outcomes can change. A population at the very edge of survival can be brought back. Slowly, never without continuous effort, never without real cost, but back. As the afternoon lengthens in the forest and the light begins its slow turn toward gold, gorillas start building their nests for the night. The process takes perhaps 5 to 10 minutes per individual. They select a location, against a tree, in a shallow ground depression, in the fork of a low branch, and begin bending and weaving the surrounding vegetation around themselves. The silverback typically builds his nest near the center of the group, from which he can remain aware of the others. Mothers build nests large enough to accommodate their infants. Juveniles build smaller nests with varying degrees of success. The youngest ones, still learning, produce nests that are slightly lopsided, slightly imperfect, but warm enough, safe enough, sufficient for a night in the forest. Then the equatorial dark arrives quickly. Once the sun reaches the horizon, the light drops fast. The birds fall quiet. The insects begin. The temperature descends, and in their nests, distributed through the undergrowth and low branches of the old green forest, the gorillas sleep. Do gorillas dream? It cannot be stated with certainty, but gorillas experience REM sleep, the phase in which dreaming is most likely to occur. During REM sleep, they display the same rapid eye movements and subtle muscular activity that humans display during dreaming. Their expressions shift sometimes during sleep. Their hands move occasionally. A young gorilla will sometimes produce soft sounds in its sleep, small murmurs and sighs that suggest something occurring behind closed eyes. What a gorilla might dream of is impossible to know. The forest, perhaps, the smell of rain on leaves, the warmth of another body close in the dark, a remembered afternoon of play, the sound of the silverback's soft vocalization somewhere nearby in the night. All is well. I am here. Rest. The Karisoki Research Center, established by Diane Fossey in the Virunga Mountains, has been conducting continuous observation of mountain gorillas since 1967. More than 50 years of unbroken study, the same families tracked across multiple generations. Births recorded, deaths recorded, alliances observed, behaviors noted once and set aside, then encountered again a decade later, and understood differently in the longer context. This kind of longitudinal research, the patient accumulation of observation across not just years, but generations, is what makes it genuinely valuable. Gorilla society, like human society, cannot be understood in a season or a year. It begins to reveal itself over generations, when you can trace how a mother's approach to foraging shapes her daughters, and how her daughters shapes her granddaughters. When you can observe how a silverback's temperament influences the social patterns of his entire group for the duration of his leadership. Some of the gorillas currently being observed at Karisoki are the grandchildren or great-grandchildren of the individuals Fossey first documented. The researchers studying them today were not yet born when this work began. Now consider something that deserves its own quiet moment. Each gorilla group carries its own specific traditions. Some researchers have observed mountain gorillas consuming a small climbing herb called galium, which has fine, hooked bristles along its stems. The plant is somewhat uncomfortable to eat, but gorillas have developed a technique for managing this. They fold the plant carefully before eating it, pressing the leaves inward so the bristles face the interior of the bundle. Different gorilla populations have been observed folding the plant in slightly different ways. The same problem, solved through different learned solutions, passed down within each community as a form of tradition. Culture at the level of how to fold a scratchy plant before eating it. It may sound minor. It is not. The capacity for one community's solution to differ from another's, for knowledge to be held and transmitted within a specific group, is precisely what distinguishes a community from a simple collection of individuals. Gorillas also have distinct personalities, Researchers who spend extended time with specific groups say this consistently and without hesitation. Each gorilla is recognizably and specifically themselves. Some are bold and curious. Others are shy and careful. Some are patient with young animals. Others find juveniles exhausting. Some seek out company readily. Others prefer to spend rest periods slightly apart in their own small patch of shade. Some share food generously. Some do not. These tendencies are stable across time and across situations. A shy gorilla remains shy. A bold one remains bold. Whatever it is that makes each gorilla themselves, something prior to experience, underneath it, persistent through it, it is genuinely their own. Somewhere in the dark tonight, in a forest in Rwanda or the Democratic Republic of Congo, a gorilla family is settling into sleep. The silverback's great body is heavy in his nest, his breathing slow and deep and regular. Around him, his family, an infant pressed against its mother's chest, a juvenile curled in a low branch above, a female lying on her side in the nest she built with her own hands an hour ago. The forest sounds around them, insects in dense, layered chorus, the drip of condensation from high leaves, the distant sound of water moving over stone. The temperature has dropped. Their fur holds the warmth. The dark is complete, and they are not afraid of it. They have spent every night of their lives inside this darkness. It belongs to them. They belong to it. They share 98.3% of their DNA with you. They are breathing right now in the same slow rhythm that your body is moving toward. Their cells carry 10 million years of accumulated knowledge about how to rest, how to let the body be heavy, how to stay warm, how to remain close to those who are trusted, how to allow the dark to take you gently under without resistance. You have been listening tonight to beings who have never learned to rush, who have moved through their lives at the pace of leaves, who have built their sleeping places fresh each evening and left them each morning without looking back, who have eaten slowly and rested deeply and cared for their young and sat in afternoon light doing nothing at all with apparent satisfaction, who have laughed and grieved and held close the ones they love through the long, sound-filled nights of the forest. There is nothing you are required to do right now. Just be where you are, warm, still, held by the dark. Your body knows exactly what to do in this moment. It has known for far longer than you have been alive. The knowledge lives in your muscles, in the slow drop of your breath, in the softening of everything that no longer needs to be held. Let it go. The day, the weight it carried, the things that were difficult, and the things that remain unfinished, and the things that are still somewhere out there, waiting. Let them wait. Tomorrow has not arrived. Right now, there is only this: the quiet, the dark, your breath, the soft sounds of wherever you are. A gorilla in its nest does not lie awake in the dark rehearsing tomorrow. It rests, ancient and large and completely still. The forest around it, the family close, the night continuing in all its layered living sound. Somewhere in the trees, the silverback makes one final low sound. A slow, rumbling exhalation of complete and unhurried ease. I am here. All is well. Rest. And the forest holds still around him, and the night moves on, and all of them together sleep. And so can you.